Yep.
Oh
Okay,
man.
okay, okay. It's now recording. Okay. I guess that yeah. I guess this is just
Hmm. I
All
guess we're
right. We're
calling.
we're now beginning. Okay. I guess it's just gonna be have to be me and Mastrovv, unless is that how it's pronounced?
Mastro, yeah.
I
Mastro?
guess we would do
Yeah,
it.
Mastro.
Hmm.
The V's I know are very very
Misleading.
confusing, but it's a W.
It's a W, so it's Mastro?
Yeah.
Mastrow?
Just Mastro, but the W, it's
I'd say
Ro.
maestro, but
Yeah.
that would make a whole lot more sense.
Yeah.
So okay, I guess we're gonna have to start with yeah, Mastro. Okay, here we go.
Maestro.
All right. Okay, do we okay, the third person here,
Kind of wasn't.
what's the dealio here?
I don't know. I just sort of joined here because you followed me on Twitter, and I'm like, Fox Podcast, not affiliated with Fox Media.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't worry. We are our own Fox, but actually, I can give you your own episode if you want. I tomorrow if you'd like.
I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to say on the whole business of being furry. Not. It's just sort of whatever. I mean, I can go if this isn't the kind of episode you were looking for.
I'll leave that up to Mastro if he wants. If he just wants a one-on-one, that's perfectly fine. This
I
is
mean,
pretty
it's okay,
unexpected.
man. Like my topic is basically about the Federal Reserve.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was actually hyping up the episode about like Money was the first guest, but it's like a bunch of stuff happened like the week of, and I'm like, oh great, that kind of pushed it out.
Yeah.
I got like hours, like days to update Warzone of
Yeah. So I mean, like, if you
Netflix
got an
movies.
opinion about it too, man, like that'll work.
I just heard it was
Um,
not a
I
good
actually
thing.
don't really, which is actually why I'm kind of interested because I do know a lot about government, but not really the Federal Reserve specifically.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, I guess it's just going to be the, uh, actually, yeah, yeah, Creeping Iron can stay if he wants.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because creeping, you could
No, thank
basically like,
you.
give a little bit of an opinion and stuff like that of what you
Yeah,
think,
I actually
man.
kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just gotta
Um.
say, what's with the lack of zebras? Not enough zebras. Get
Kind
your
of
stripes
zebras. Yeah,
on,
man.
America.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, okay, so we're gonna start recording right now. Okay. Hello, welcome to the Fox's Corner with your favorite fail son, me. Anyway. All right, don't forget before we start, I should also mention it is Veterans Day today, and I think that's worthy of note.
It
Um,
is always a note,
yeah,
just like the Bill of Rights.
and there are a lot of I do actually have a lot of veterans in both my family and my friends, and I think that is worthy of note, at least for the American watchers. And then also, it should be added for today. Don't forget to, oh, the usual. Don't forget to follow the Fox's Corner on Instagram, Twitter, Patreon, our SoundCloud.
Oh, there's
I'm
an
also now on
Instagram.
Anchor, and
Hmm.
also the subreddit r OK Buddy Bryfox, is new. And don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. And here we go. Okay, today we have our first guest, which is Mastro. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and we also have Buddy over here, Creeping Iron.
A
Is that correct?
mystery. Mystery man, that's me.
You want to go
Yeah.
by Mystery Man?
Nah, and I'm just joking again. Because I kind of just popped in here without any pretense.
You know what? I can respect the assertiveness.
Hmm.
Okay, so to kill some dead air. Okay, so today we did say before that the topic is going to be the Federal
The Federal
Reserve. Is that
Reserve.
correct?
Yes.
That is right.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically the premise of the Fox's Corner was I just basically we get people from really any walks of life, and we basically give them an hour of the topic of their choosing, and give them a lot of leeway. So Mastro, you take control from here.
Well, basically, like, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Federal Reserve because the fact that in the fandom, I've asked many questions over the years, and just people seem very confused of like why it's a question.
I'd say that's an unlikely location to find such discussions.
Well, yeah, but
I wouldn't
even
say so.
asking just normal people in the first place that are not part of the fandom don't even know about like what a furry is. Um, and the fact that both both walks of life, both different kinds of people have no answer.
The people who are furries and who aren't yet furries.
Yeah, and the fact that like when you hear the Federal Reserve, what do you think of? Like, what do you mainly think when somebody says, "Oh yes, this money comes from the Federal Reserve"?
I mean,
Uh,
Who do you think owns it?
well, first, when I think of the Federal Reserve, I think of the money printer go, brrr, it's like I don't, maybe more so now.
Yeah. Um. But yeah, did you know that like the Federal Reserve is not part of the government? Like it's not owned by the federal government?
I would hope the
Well,
people own all the money.
if I remember correctly, sorry to interrupt. If I remember correctly, the only thing I can say the Federal Reserve that I'm kind of positive of, it's that it was it established? I know it was established like 100 years ago, or a little bit over, like 1913, or around that time during the Progressive Era. And I believe that, I mean, didn't the government create it though?
No. It was private companies that wanted to bring together money, but they slid the bill in to the Senate and House of Representatives to get passed. And
I did not know that.
that's why we have it today, because the fact that that's when it got passed, because the fact that yeah, we were in a stride of success a little bit. Even up until the late 1920s, until the stock market crashed in 1928. And that's the thing, is like the Federal Reserve. A lot of people think that the federal government can regulate it, and they don't. It's owned by five families or five big names that literally.
I hope it would be the people, but I had no idea it was actual families.
Oh yes,
I wouldn't.
there are five big families that have known for that, simply because of the fact that nobody questions it.
Well, when I
It's
think of the five families, we should clarify, because there is, when we think of the five families, we think of like the New York mafia families of like the Gambinos and stuff.
Yeah. Not like the mafia. Basically, you have the Rothschilds that own the Bank of London nowadays, but these were the original five families that put money into the Federal Reserve privately.
Like the most important name, they disappear from my mind entirely when I don't.
I've heard of that family, and I do think that there are other like interests involved besides the five families, because money is money. It's just going to go to where any form of their self-serving interests are typically.
Now, here's a relevant topic. Is the Trump family involved? I think they're kind of new.
I would say no, because these were the families that were really known back then. The only thing that the only one, like I would say people consider them a company, nowadays, in New York City, but they don't think about the past, which is Goldman and Sachs.
Now you mentioned banking. What about the J.P. Morgan and the Morgan family?
An oil tycoon.
Yeah. The thing is like there were big contributors to it, and what's really crazy is that when you go to a bank nowadays and you have income tax, I mean not income tax, interest rates on banks, and when you take out a loan or interest rates for a bank, that is regulated by the Federal Reserve.
Oh, yeah, that I am aware of, because it's basically on the news every day about interests being at all-time lows. Or, in recessions you tend to hear it more.
Yes, but do you realize that the Federal Reserve can dictate if it's a recession or not? based on controlling the interest rates, because all they do is control the flow of money. And the government, without even thinking about it, people talk about the debt all the time, but they should understand that the federal government pays the Federal Reserve to print money. And most of our debt is racked up with the Federal Reserve.
Well, what about foreign debt? Because we do owe a certain amount to countries like China and Japan.
Oh,
In fact,
I agree.
Japan's the largest
I'm
creditor.
not saying our whole debt is based on that. I'm saying that people understand that we have a debt to the Federal Reserve, which is considered to most people the federal government. Where people think the federal government prints money, and they don't. And that's the weird part, is that everybody thinks that they do, and they regulate the flow of money and the value of money. And the crazy part is that if the Federal Reserve ever decreased the value of the dollar, a lot of the world's economy of these small countries would die. They bankruptcy. They would file for bankruptcy on the international level, because of the fact that the value of the dollar is the standard in a lot of these foreign countries.
That is true.
And it's crazy that the Federal Reserve, people don't think about it, they control the power of that. That's so mighty that people don't think about it. That they control the value of a country completely collapsing in modern day times, all by saying, "Hey, the value of the dollar doesn't matter anymore, guys. We're going to lower it to 99 cents."
Even though technically it doesn't matter, and it only exists in the theory of community and market share.
Oh, you mean like the fiat
how many
theory?
people? How many people do you know have never seen $100 bill? But more than a paycheck, and then they pay bills.
Yeah.
It doesn't sit in their wallet.
Sometimes.
So the value of $100 bill is so astronomically crazy that every TV show you see nowadays or movies, a value of $100
is nothing.
Seems crazy that it's nothing. Yeah. And that's because the Federal Reserve, like I said, their job is to bring the fear of money to you and say that it has value. Okay, like I've told many people before that you don't understand this, is that when you go into a store, okay, and you go and you buy something, like fruit, vegetables, even a simple apple, and you go to the counter and you buy that, are you buying that with something of value?
I'm buying it with what the store thinks it's worth.
Uh-huh. But
we're buying it with a currency, which is a store. Was it a store of value of some kind?
Theoretically.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Is that we have this like false sense of like that, oh, okay, money has value. And yet it doesn't. It used to. It literally, in Roman culture, a gold piece had value because it was made of a material that had value of of currency.
Well, actually, I would like to add to that. Now you mentioned gold, because I am definitely like I could consider myself one of those like listeners of like who was it? Who owns Euro Pacific Capital? I believe it was Peter Schiff. Those kinds of people who talk about like gold and its value, and then monetary policy. So that's my really only familiarity with it that I'm aware of. But one thing I should mention too is what gives gold value, though? That's one thing I've always wondered, because we just give it kind of an inherent value to it.
Because of the fact that it doesn't break down or deteriorate under certain chemicals or certain circumstances.
It really is down to where
it doesn't tarnish like silver or iron does.
Well, silver was also used as a currency. In fact, China had it as its like only currency, which is why Britain had issues regarding trading with it back in colonial times.
Yes, I agree with that. I'm saying that gold had more value than silver because of the fact of that, and a lot of ancient civilizations considered it to be a very valuable resource to make anything out of. But modern day, that's another thing that we're basically falsely given. Just like diamonds, people consider diamonds to have value.
Yeah,
diamonds they can be broken down with salt.
Yeah, well, the thing about diamonds is, like, we were always told, like, they were worth a lot. I'm sorry if talking over you, Creepingiron. Yeah, now you mentioned diamonds, because I did have a friend who was South African, and he would always talk about the diamond industry over there. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know it was basically just a monopoly where the value was manipulated like crazy, when in reality you could just make them in a lab for like, way below the value that they're sold for typically.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, compare that of basically what I'm saying about money is the fact that we have a pre-notion of like, okay, this is a dollar bill, this is worth $1. But in reality, what's the standard of that? And the people that regulate that for the United States is the Federal Reserve. And like I said, if they decrease
Well,
the value of that, it can cripple other economies. And
that is
that's
true.
why interest rates, if interest rate, like when people are like, oh my gosh, interest rates go high, you want them to go high. But you know who doesn't want them to go high? The
The
Federal
government.
Reserve. If it
Oh,
goes high, then the federal government can pay less money to them for money that they print.
Now that
That's why
you
interest rates will
mentioned
stay low.
now that you mentioned interest rates, sorry, I'm not really like a monetary person. I'm more like history, so I'm not
Yeah.
really that good in terms of like how it operates. I'm just familiar like with maybe what it's done in the past. If I remember, the peak of interest rates was around the end of Jimmy Carter's term in 1980, where interest
Do you
rates
know
were
why?
like 15 to 17%. Was that the amount?
now here's
Yeah.
an interesting thing that I can still say today, as of recording. Jimmy Carter is still around, as far as we know.
Oh yeah, he's still alive. I
He's
mean,
still
I
alive.
think he's still
That's not
alive.
crazy. I hope so. He had a pretty funny encounter in Poland, if you'll want to tell that story.
Oh wait, the rabbit
Uh,
attack. That's my favorite Jimmy Carter
Yeah.
story.
well, I mean, is swearing okay? Can I swear? Because
Uh,
the
once we can swear once.
Yeah.
This is
okay
like
here
a
okay
PG-13 movie where we can
this
only
is
do it
okay
like once.
okay. Here's the funny story. Basically, he went to a mission or a meeting in Poland in like 1978, and he basically told the Polish people, "I'm here to love you for a long time," but basically his translator said, "I'm here to fuck and I'm not leaving." And that is my swear for the episode.
All right,
Yeah.
that's a good swear.
The rabbit
All right,
attack
you got
story.
me.
Yeah. But the you made a good point of the reason why interest rates were high. But do you realize what happened in 1976?
I believe it was, well, Jimmy Carter got elected in 76. And then if I remember correctly, 76 is also, I don't know if it was 71 or 73 or
That's the
76.
bicentennial.
If it was, oh yeah, bicentennial. If it was also, was it the oil embargo from the Middle East?
That as well.
Mhm.
But also what
But
happened in 1976 is the standard of gold originally got tarnished, rid of,
terminated.
for the standard of money in the United States.
Wait, but I
Okay.
thought Nixon did that in 1971. Or sorry.
76 was official internationally,
Oh, okay.
which meant that every country, if they had a value of currency in the United States, that's when basically the federal government decided to say no, the value of that money is the same. It's perfectly fine. Just come and get newer bills. That's why value of money, if you look at that old style of money, it's totally different from nowadays.
Yeah, I believe you could even trade at least way back. You actually could exchange dollars for silver or
You
gold
can
or
walk
something
into a
because it was a
bank and then
certificate.
Yep.
So I do
And
remember
after
that.
1976,
1970.
officially, internationally, you could not do that any longer. And that's a problem if you think about it, because now we're believing money has value still to this
Which
day,
it doesn't
which it
anymore.
doesn't. And that's
It
what I'm
doesn't.
saying.
It's fiat.
Is the
Yeah.
is the Federal
Gold
Reserve
standard.
regulates the flow of money, tells you that it has value, and when you go to the store and buy something, guess what? You're buying it with nothing. You're literally getting something for nothing.
Even denim and cotton dyed green to these people, and
And
sometimes brown.
yeah, and isn't that
With a
crazy
few
to
security
think
measures.
about that? When you go to
Well,
the
now
store
here's
to
the thing
get
I just
something,
thought.
you
Now,
get
why?
goods and services for no value.
Okay, now
And it's
Well, a perceived
mind-boggling.
value, we should say.
Yeah,
okay.
like that's the crazy thing is that we believe that this piece of fabric cloth that
It's
literally
not
like
named
is painted
denim.
and said that it has value, and it's like, what?
Now,
It's
here's the
crazy.
thing about it. If you think, why would they put so many security measures on, let's say, $100 bill? The Benjamin, it costs like 16 cents, 16, I think it's 16 cents to produce one.
Yeah,
Why would they put security measures on something that's worthless? Now there's your
Well,
counter
because
argument.
the Federal Reserve has that safety feature there. Because here's the problem.
counterfeiting?
Think about this. Yes, think about a system of counterfeit to where it's almost perfect, pristine. And Hawaii, American Samoa and Hawaii dealt with this back in the 60s of post World War II, walking into what was it, Korea. Um, American troops would come and bring American currency over to other lands, like the Philippines and Japan, and they would try to copy it and bring money back and flow it into American Samoa and Hawaii.
All right.
That I did not know about. What I do remember, now you mentioned that about foreign currencies and like trying to get money in. Do you remember the scandal that was reported by, I think it was it Foreign Affairs? I forgot the name of the magazine, but I do remember they specialize in kind of American foreign affairs regarding war or conflict. Uh, what was it? I believe it was that they found that trillions of dollars being flown into certain Middle Eastern countries over the course of, I believe, since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. So since from that timeline, they believe that like magically a trillion in currency was like missing from the Pentagon or something.
Yeah, it was flown in there for basically kidnappings and ransoms.
But $1 trillion?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I mean,
Uh-huh.
I mean, when I heard it originally, the number, I think it was more. I think it was like 3 trillion or something over that
Yeah.
course of time. And I always just conceptualized like, okay, maybe it was just like, because military contracts are huge. Like if you read like those
If you
reports from
know
like
what
the
Civ
companies.
is getting for what they're getting for the pistol handgun system, that's like millions of dollars, and they went up, they like doubled production in the time that they're given.
Yeah.
They've had like 4 years, and they've done 1 million pistols.
But the big thing is that uh the value of money suppresses people. Because here's the thing: if you work, and the simple thing is say you work in a warehouse, okay? You have
Okay.
100 people that are assigned to come in, write their name on a piece of paper, and walk out of the building, and they get $100. But if you
Okay.
come in there and your boss that you see at the front of the building there brings you
Hmm.
up and says, "Hey, guess what? If you go and you sign Billy Bob's name over there, I'm gonna pay you $200." Okay, but what if Billy Bob comes in and tries to sign his own name, and he doesn't do that? Now you think you have an advantage over him. You're better at work than he is, so you got asked to do that, and now that guy feels like he's crap. So he's going to try to work harder and harder and harder for the same amount of money, all because you gave that guy $200. So you make more money because that guy's working harder, and that's how factory workers love that crap. So it's
Well,
crazy the value of money still, even though it has no value.
Okay, I would like to really quickly say something. Shout out to the Fox's Corner meme chat. It's a bit lacking, so hop
it's
in
new. Yeah.
if you
Thank you,
got
by
a
the way.
chance.
It's it's basically it's a baby channel. We're
Check
all
us
babies
out
here.
on
Yeah.
We're all
Discord.
going to be big boys very
We're a
soon.
good bunch of friends.
We're still cubs. I don't. I immediately regret saying that. That's going to be
Yeah,
clipped.
that wasn't the thing to say, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Because we are not Cub.
um,
yeah. We do not support that kind of stuff here. Looking at you, Ink Money. Anyway,
Ooh,
yeah, that's a burn.
damn.
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, what do you guys think of that of what I've said so far?
Well, okay, so now you mentioned like suppressing people. That's there is okay, I kind of agree with you that there is some truth to that because I do feel that yeah, we do kind of hold people down by low wages, and I do think that stagnant wages have been a problem in the US for probably 40 years. In fact, if we were to adjust for like what was it, the productivity rate since like 1980 or around that era, and you
Yeah.
adjusted it for inflation, and you like quantified the gap between what should have been and what we have. I believe the amount that we're missing per worker on average is about $1,000 a month.
Ooh.
So, which
Are
is
you
what's creepy
suggesting a
too is this is
UBI?
where it gets ominous. So when you argue for like a UBI style system, like what Andrew Yang
Ooh.
argued for back in 2020 or 2019,
Yeah.
the primaries, technically that would actually be enough to close that gap, which feels kind of ominous.
It is also kind of weird to use the twisted words of MLK Jr. and say that he wanted UBI also.
I mean,
But
I argued, I'm sorry, yeah, I kind of agree with you there, but I think the only like I'm sorry if I interrupted anybody, but I think the only example
no.
that I could remember was it Nixon's policy advisor or George McGovern's campaign that argued that we needed a negative income tax, that if you made below a certain number, you'd get a return that was basically like a UBI in itself.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing that recently happened. No, not recently, but happened in New York. That they passed, which was increasing minimum wage. And I was basically a kid 2 years out of high school working at McDonald's. Was like, yeah, man, this is great. And then I realized of tax. The more you
Well, New
make,
York's
the
a high
more they
tax
take.
state.
So it
Damn,
became
bro.
That's true,
useless.
true.
Like it
Okay,
became so
yes.
useless to literally make more money because now you're getting more taxes taken out. To where
That's a hot
my
take.
girlfriend at the time was working in another state, and I asked her, I said, "Hey, how much are you making for 40 hours a week?" She was like, about 350. I said, "Okay,
Hmm.
that's really cool." Well, guess how
All
much
right.
I'm making? 320. I was roughly about 325. All
After
because I'm
tax or
paying more
before?
tax, but I'm making almost basically 1.5 times the amount of money she's making. And it increased because the fact that the more you can like the more you make, the more they take. And that's what
That's
sucks.
true.
That's
Yeah, that
that's
does
another
suck.
way to suppress people of just basically saying, "Hey, look, the value of money is this, but the value of the tax is this."
Now you mentioned that about taxes, since we're on the topic, I always argued that, I mean, I don't mind paying a certain amount if I can at least visualize what I'm getting back. So what I mean by that is, for example, I think, well, obviously California is a super high tax state, and
Hmm.
I am very familiar with California tax rates. It is very ridiculous at times.
It's
The
gonna.
top tax rate is like, if you include federal on top of uh, state, it would be like 50.5%, I think,
Mhm.
for the top marginal tax rate. But the thing is, like, at least like California up until the 1960s offered free college, right? Like for all, I think, in-state students of up to a certain threshold.
Hmm.
That doesn't exist anymore. That kind of went away around Governor Reagan's term. But at least like if I could visualize, like, hey, this is going to the UC system, the CSU system, the California Community College system. It's going to all this. It's going to the roads. It's going to I don't know, the homeless because there's a ridiculous amount here. Um, it's going to, I don't know, mental hospitals because Ronald Reagan also closed those later as a president.
Yeah,
Like at
he
least if I can
did
visualize
basically create the mental
something
illness
out of it,
by
I
closing
wouldn't
all of the
mind it.
asylums.
But when like in New York, where is the money going? Because I think California's criticism was that we're actually not very transparent with how we spend tax money at the state level. I don't know if New
Yeah.
York's transparent or not.
They are a little bit. But the big problem is that people don't understand is the fact that like in New York State we have a really cool saying. Never drive east. When you do, you're gonna go to the island that's gonna end up in the Atlantic Ocean in about 20 years. And we want that to happen because the good thing is that if New York City became their own state, like just an island in the middle of the Atlantic, that would be great because we wouldn't get taxed as high as we do. And I think that again, back to the value of money. People think that the value of money is a standard, that it's not a free flowing, ever changing number. And I think if people get out of that mindset that they think it's just a standard value, and it's never going to change. They're living in a fantasy.
Well, here's my problem. Then where does modern monetary theory come here? Because I'm aware that that's basically the system Japan uses right now for the yen. So where would it go here with the dollar?
I would say to not be like basically a mathematician, but the fact that the value of the money should stay the same, but the falseness of where it comes from and the standard value should be understood by everyone, which means the federal government should just literally get rid of the now law that says that the Federal Reserve should exist, and I think the government should print their own money. Hell, there's several different governments in the EU that print the euro, and it's a fluctuating value.
Okay, I am back. You were talking about
Well,
euros, the Greek
hi.
Yeah.
system.
Yes, we were talking about how
Yeah.
I believe, yeah, the EU. Now that you mention it, yeah, the EU is different. I think that every country kind of like allows its own
Wait, it's
production
still
of
on
euros. Is that
economic,
Yeah.
correct?
not
Yeah.
euros, like the
So the
sandwich?
thing is what would really make you question of where we went wrong on doing the value of money is that go back and look at the Civil War documents of American currency. The South, every state printed their own money. Every northern
Texas,
state,
before there was a CSA,
yes,
also had its own money,
yeah. But the thing
and there
is that
was a
no
Western
matter what state you went
Florida.
to, there was still a value on that currency in other states. It still mattered. And I think if the federal government went back to printing their own money and telling states, hey, guess what? Here's the standard value for currency, but you can be able to regulate that themselves. And it'd
Okay,
be
so you
fine.
kind of want. I'm sorry to interrupt, but like, so would you say you want like more a European style system where every state kind of has like its own production?
Not necessarily like each state have their own production, because then you have no regulation. But at least have a standardized way of doing it among several different states spread out through the country.
Okay,
Not just all of a sudden the Federal Reserve saying, "Oh no, only our banks can do that, and only we control the flow of money. We only control the value of money. We control the interest rates on money. We control how people treat money." And the
okay,
digital age has made that even more revealing. That is shocking to the public people, just common people that walk down the street. Of that, you go and you slide a card, and you look at the numbers, and you don't think where that's from. You don't think like people get paid, and they look at that paycheck and they're like, oh cool. That they look at the amount of money, but they don't realize that those numbers used to mean something. It used to mean of how much you made, how like the value of something, the value of the currency like they're making that can help you live. And I think we've lost that.
well, here's one thing. Here's actually, yeah, here's the best question I could ask right now at the moment. Then what's your opinion on Bitcoin? Because that's kind of a move to like decentralize currency altogether.
I agree with Bitcoin. I'm on the side of promoting that. I want to see it in the further future. And what I mean by that is it's not our near future with Bitcoin, because I think that the more that people adopt it, the more it's going to be structured, and it's going to be dumbed down, and I don't want that. Like,
Said
Bitcoin
that the
doesn't need
last Bitcoin
structure.
will be mined
It just needs
by the
to
end of the
keep the
century.
value it does currently, and for people to believe it and understand
$16,000.
that currency is valid. All it
It
needs is
is
to
a
be
very
validated. If it
acceptable
gets
currency.
dumbed down and structured the way that governments want it to be, it's useless.
Well, I
Now all
believe
the
now you
modern
mentioned that.
banks are wanting to get into it.
Creeping Iron, did you want to add something?
Current value as of recording is 16 grand, and it's a very acceptable currency. I'd say that Yeah, the last Bitcoin is theorized to be mined by the end of the century, so we may see that in due time, which is very interesting to think about, as we really can't comprehend what a computer is able to spit out. And my last point for before I hand it off to either of you two gentlemen is that the big banks are now interested in getting their own foot in the door of crypto. So I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on that subject as well.
Yeah, I'll go first on that.
Okay.
I would say
Big
no.
springboard.
I would say big banks need to stay away from it. They
Stay
need to
in the
go away
business
from it.
of
They
physical money.
own the system of flow of money enough. I get that they're greedy with trying to jump on Bitcoin, but like I said, the moment that Bitcoin becomes structured and has a standard put on it, that's when it doesn't become a currency that's useful for people to use.
So
Because
you just
it's
don't want, sorry, if I'm just a little curious. So basically, you don't want cryptocurrencies generally to be institutionalized.
no, I would like to say, no, basically a central system of regulating Bitcoin internationally, like basically a council of basically leaders that say, hey, look, this is the value of currency, and make sure it's not standardized. Have no private companies own it, own the flow of it. Have no form of let's say vulnerabilities, like basically hackers to abuse the system, like they can with credit cards now, and make it just a simple currency that people can use.
It is
Okay.
open source all the way through.
I'm sorry, Creeping Iron, could you repeat
It
that? My
is
microphone's being
it
dumb.
is open source.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I agree. Open source, yeah, to
Well, here's
where
one thing.
any country could pick it up and use it as a currency. Yeah, like I said, I just don't want banks to touch it. Banks
Well,
already have the system locked down enough.
oh, yeah. Well, now you mentioned banking, because like banking in and of itself isn't problematic. It's when the money is abused. For example, the best example I could probably give is obviously what happened with, I believe it was Goldman Sachs around 2008, when they were I guess what's considered the banking equivalent of platforming somebody when they were doing it with authoritarian regimes overseas, because the big critique was don't legitimize dictatorships like in the third world or autocrats abroad. But again, this is very vague, and I understand that, when the U.S. government says that, it's often with self-serving interests.
Okay, I have a offshoot, like a tangent. It has to tie kind of do with money. Christmas is coming up. Um, Nothing more important than to read. Now, do you have any good book recommendations that you should put on your list or give to a friend? Just
I do.
as a
If you want a book for modern stuff,
mm-hmm.
Fahrenheit 451.
Ooh, that is a
That's
it still
a good book.
works.
I actually did read
Oh,
1984 earlier in the year. I
Brave
was actually
New
a little
World
disappointed.
was I didn't like Brave New World. It was
I
just
read that too. Same.
I
Yeah,
feel like that was just too extreme. Like, no, we're not recycling humans and kids are we're not gonna
yeah,
get into that. Yeah, I just don't see that.
yeah. I mean, I would agree with also 1984. Yeah, between Fahrenheit 451 and 1984, I would say those two books are very set for modern day, and those are the reason why they're on the banned book list. Because the
I would
fact
say
of
that
that,
True.
that
like,
True.
was trying to push
they,
stuff.
they say too much about what's going on, man. Like, think about how many countries, dude, in history burn books. China did, Nazi Germany did, Russia under Stalin did. Like, you take away history of what people can learn and you can rewrite it instantly.
Well, also, Spain, I believe, burned all the Aztec literature.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Ooh,
So yeah, so that if you take away a lot of the history that people,
history
future
being
generations
rewritten
can't know,
or redacted.
that's just like the Athenian library, man. Back in Roman times, got burned 3 times, two on purpose,
The
burned to
Library
the
of
ground.
I
Alexandria
did not know
still
that.
burns.
So think about. history like that, man, of how much history is in that, and just whoosh, wiped away.
Think
Nobody
about all
nobody
the
knows
True.
stuff
it.
we don't know
Well,
anymore.
yeah. Well, now that you mentioned money, because obviously, technically, the government does have at least, I think, some control on money. At least the criticism was for a lot of people who were in Bitcoin when it started, the critique was that there basically is a monopoly on currency. And it's like, the country, for example, the United States, there's a monopoly on currency. It's just the dollar. There's really nothing else. Officially, like you can't go to a store and just, pull out gold bricks and sell it to
Yeah,
people. So it's like, so what they mean is like they want other choices or they want decentralization away from the Federal Reserve. Or another critique I heard was, I believe recently the Trump administration, way back, what was it, like a year ago, 2 years ago, they tried to replace, or at least they speculated that he wanted to replace, was it Jerome Powell as the federal chair for just, anybody else who was more in the interest of the administration.
yeah,
And the thing is, well, technically, the government does have at least some control on the Federal Reserve because if it, at least through taxation, or if the government just today decided, you know what, we're just going to restructure the currency altogether. Like technically, they could just do that. I mean, we did that before,
oh yeah, we did.
or so it's like we still have some control. It's just maybe some aspects. I mean, it's changed over time.
Yeah.
Like
But
we
the
don't use the
question
gold
is
standard
is
anymore.
how many people do you think would vote for that to change that? Probably not many. The Federal Reserve has too much control over the federal government's actions based on just saying, hey, look, we tax you to make money.
Also, I believe, now that you mentioned that, because about the control of the Federal Reserve, one thing though I found interesting was I believe during 2008, during the recession, when Obama entered office, I believe that one of the things he did was he actually restructured banks in agreement to getting, uh, well, I guess, yeah, bailout money. The bailout that was given to certain financial institutions was like under certain conditions, and I think they did have to pay back in certain amounts. So what ended up happening was like I think like 1/3 of all the money we gave out actually was returned so far, and it's coming in via payments. But
Yeah.
another thing too was we did actually have the government forcibly restructure banks, and I believe some even had to get at least partially equity stakes at these financial institutions. So technically, there is at least a peripheral control of currency via control partially of the institutions around it.
Yeah. But what if I told you that every bank you've ever went to has some source of debt that they had to pay to the Federal Reserve?
Well, yeah, that was the agreement after 2008.
Hmm.
Also, to even more so, I should say.
So think about how much a bank is controlled by that, because all the Federal Reserve has to say is, nope, give me my money now, and they can't do anything about it. Bank
It's
goes
also
away,
not
goes
legal for
bankrupt.
them to.
Well, I mean, there's still the FDIC that has to cover that. Also,
Yeah.
the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So there's still like some
Oh yeah, there is.
regulations, somewhat. Also, there's obviously the amount of cash they have to hold by
Speaking of
law, which
cash to
is
hold, do you know how much a bank has to hold?
yeah, 10% for fractional reserve banking.
Uh-huh.
I will say,
Do you realize how crazy that
another.
is? You
Well, I
Um,
mean,
go
you should
in,
hold cash generally. I mean, like, you shouldn't have nothing unless you're like a credit union, which is a different story.
yeah, but the thing is all they have to do is hold that when they give a loan.
Yeah, but they have to give out the rest through loans. Although I do agree that fractional reserve banking can be sketchy to me too, because it just artificially inflates like a bank's assets
Yep.
amongst other banks.
And that's what I was going to tie it into, of the fact that, yeah. So here's the problem. When you do that and the Federal Reserve comes knocking and goes, "Hey, hey, we want our money," and the bank can't pay that, that's when you get the noose around that bank's neck right there that says, "Nope. Nope, no, 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 no. You got to listen to us. You got to listen to what we
okay,
want."
I'm gonna quickly lighten the mood again by plugging the Discord. If you come here soon enough, you will see a picture of my dog Ruby when she was baby. See my dog. Look at my dog.
Yes, we are
She
advertising dogs. Yes,
many
very
dogs,
yes, many dogs.
poster dogs,
Very cute
and
dogs. What was I gonna say? Yeah, but the thing is, actually, now you mention that. Well, one thing that should be noted though is how many banks, at least after the kind of New Deal policies, how many have, besides, I mean, obviously Lehman Brothers is the best example we could point to, but how many banks have that we of note have closed between the New Deal policy and like Glass-Steagall and maybe like up to maybe Frank Dodd.
mm,
Quite a bit have filed for basically money from the federal government. But
definitely not
remember,
acceptable.
the big
Right.
banks, just like the federal government, has taught them over the years, big banks never fail.
That
No,
is
big
true.
banks will never fail,
Because they're
even though
too
they
big to
do.
fail.
They
Well,
can fail.
Lehman Brothers
Steal.
technically failed, but I guess they got bought up by others.
Yeah,
But that was more extreme circumstances and
I mean that's what
mishandling
happened
of
when
funds.
banks dealt with that. It was survival of the fittest. You had big strong banks that went and bought out the guys that failed and fell apart.
Well, that I do agree with. That big banks do just buy up the smaller ones, and it just gives them a larger sharehold of the market overall, which is a concerning because there's actually, now you mention it, there are less chartered banks now in America that, or at least the amount of new banks being created is at an all-time low, and that's been a trend that continued since 2008. So that I do agree with you. It's getting harder to start new banks
Yep.
overall.
Mm,
Like the famous comedian George Carlin said, is
I
he
love George.
sat down for an interview and said, "You want to know what's crazy? How many banks do you know in your local area that you when you drive down the street? How many gas stations do you know of names? How many different convenience stores do you know? But here's the thing: if you go to any grocery store or store that sells ice cream, do you know how many flavors of ice cream you see? 26. 26 flavors of ice cream. But yet you only see 3 banks. You only see 4 convenience stores. You only see about 6 or 7 gas stations, different kinds of gas stations in your state and in your area. But yet, yeah, 26 flavors of ice cream. So how many choices do we get on our banks? 3. How many do we get choice on the gas station we go to, the local place we go to for food and resources? But yet we can get 26 flavors of ice cream.
That's
Isn't
true.
that crazy for banks, man? Like
That's
literally, yeah.
true. Yeah, it's a big club and you ain't in it.
Ooh.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, now you mention it. I mean, obviously, banks deserve a lot of scrutiny because historically they keep messing up, and it seems every time we deregulate them, there's a long-term consequence. Like, for example, the predatory loans and high interest rates through, which I guess counts as usury if you're a more religious person watching this, or also just what happened. If you remember the scandal with a certain bank who will go unnamed because I don't want to die mysteriously. Um, if you remember
Ooh.
that scandal in 2010 regarding them setting up fraudulent accounts and then
Uh
charging
huh.
people extra. Yeah, so obviously, banks
Sending.
do deserve some scrutiny here, and in fact, a lot. But the thing regarding the Federal Reserve is, I mean, the government still has control on banks. I mean, we do regulate them. We had Frank Dodd, you had the New Deal era policies, you had Glass-Steagall. There were some policies, I forgot which one, I believe, who was it? Ronald Reagan that overthrew or repealed Glass-Steagall.
Yeah.
There
Um.
is Trump actually. Did you know actually now that the government can just and this is actually criticism of Trump because they're saying they were just pumping in like $1 trillion a day into the market at one point to keep the market afloat during COVID. So it's like I don't get how the government agreed to this. I mean, the executive branch actually now, at least after Obama, can now just print out as much as it wants basically
Yep.
in an emergency.
And it's not regulated how much they can print.
That is true. I mean, I think they printed out 6 trillion so far.
Yep. But talking about banks, the crazy thing is you say that of how the federal government can sort of regulate them a little bit, or at least like try to. But here's the big thing that people don't question about it. Is like I said, you see 3 banks in your area. Do you know that 45% of banks in the United States are privately owned?
Okay.
45%.
Wait, but like, define private here. Like,
Privately owned, which means they're not regulated by a federal by the federal government.
okay, are we counting credit unions here? Because that's a different
We
story.
can credit unions. I would say no. These are just banks. Credit unions and banks are different.
Yeah, they're two sides of like
Yeah,
what's it called? Two sides of the same coin. They operate a little differently, and I do
yeah,
think that they don't fall under banking regulation. I think the credit union, they have their own policies and structures, or
yeah.
however they are
But yeah,
regulated.
I'm talking about just 45% of just banks, not credit unions. Yeah, 45% of banks in the United States are privately owned. That's nuts. That means that literally your local bank, or at least out of 3 banks that you see, most likely 1, if not 2 of them, are privately owned, which means they regulate the interest rates internally. They just go off the federal interest rate as a guideline.
Oh, you mean like the coupon rate?
Yeah,
Okay, I don't know how much the coupon rate is right now because I haven't checked, but I do know it's pretty low right now.
yeah. So it's crazy that literally like nobody questions this stuff, man. Like I found
Well,
this out by literally just learning and doing research and going, wait, how does nobody understand that?
well, monetary policy can obviously be very big, and a lot of even presidents don't know. In fact, they criticized Jimmy Carter for not understanding the bond market very well. And then also, Trump has his own problems. I mean, this is more jokingly because if you remember Trump the board game from like the 90s, it
I'm
his
gonna do
the board
something
game
on the
operated
board
under like
game.
expansionary monetary policy or something,
Yeah.
which is like a really like superficial jab, but I guess that counts.
What
Yeah.
about Trump the video game? When you get a do that
I
shit
forgot.
is
Does that
funny,
exist?
bro.
Is that like a
It
thing?
is a thing, and he has reverb on his voice, and it's the funniest stuff.
I didn't even know that existed.
It is a thing.
Like, I know he put
It's
his
a
face on
computer
everything, but like
game.
a video game?
Trump stakes.
Oh yeah. The
Yummy
stakes are never higher,
commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, yeah, I do
And
understand. Monetary policy is very big and it can be very confusing to a lot of people, and even smart people sometimes struggle with it, or leadership can struggle with it. Um, the problem becomes though, when it how like where what my brain is operating as smoothly as a bank right now. Hold on. I do have friends and family in banking, a little not like high up, but like the basic tellers,
Yeah.
so they always rant about their stories, but yeah. Listen, any giant corporation's just bloated as hell, and it's a never-ending bureaucracy, and I think we all know that because at least one of us here has worked for like a giant company.
it's a never-ending story. Woo.
Yeah, like there's no actual leadership, if I'm being honest. Like a lot of big companies, it's like there's no face tied to the door. You know what I mean? It's just kind of faceless and bureaucratic and overbloated.
Yep. But people will still go and do that every day. Go to the bank, money. Oh, okay, cool. I'll throw my paycheck in there. I don't want to question anything. Nope, that's
Well,
cool. But yet, when the house that they've lived in for 50 years burns to the ground, they go to the bank and say, "Hey, I need a loan." Nope.
wait,
Nah. Because
you
we
don't
have
have home insurance? You don't have
because
like who doesn't have home insurance, bro?
that's true. But what I'm saying is that going to a bank and then now people don't question something that's existed for a while, which is, have you ever heard of credit? What your credit is?
Oh, like the credit score,
Uh-huh. Do you know who regulates your credit score?
the three big creditors.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, the three big credit agencies, yeah, which
Yes.
I will
Do
not
you
name for
know
obvious reasons.
do you know that all three credit agencies are privately owned?
Yeah, that I know of. I also know that I don't know if I'm getting in trouble, but I also know that Moody's it's private, but it's publicly traded. But yeah, it's still a private company.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is what regulates our money and what regulates the value that you have, or the worth you have for money, are all regulated by private companies.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of well, another problem too becomes sometimes the line between private and public can be confusing because it's like I often confuse people with like, what's Amtrak? Is it private or public?
Amtrak was private. I think they
Or
still are, even though
yeah,
you
well,
don't
okay,
see them much anymore.
I think it's like operates. How do I say this? It's run for profit, but I think it is run by the government.
Yeah.
It's kind of complicated. It's like it's also confusing when you ask people about like French rail or like European rail because technically it is like government run and funded partially, but it's also like privately run, and that's
Yeah,
another story for another day. But
Eurail is privately ran, but it's still regulated by all parties involved.
oh, okay. What else was I gonna say? Or another problem too becomes how do I? Because there are cases where like it does get confusing. For example, General Motors. It had a private equity stake. I do believe the government sold it in like 2012 for a certain amount in profit. Uh, what would in from the period that the private equity stake was bought and the period that it was sold, would you count that as private or public?
Consider that public.
It would be public for those 4 years,
Yes,
and then afterwards it would be private
it would be
again.
private. Yes.
Okay, because they didn't buy it entirely. It was just a partial private equity stake.
Yeah.
Although I do think
If
it was
you
enough.
own part of a company, you have a stake in that, but that's not privately owned. It's more
To
of
an
the
extent.
whole company. Yeah. But the whole company being regulated and controlled by a party or a committee is privately owned.
Okay, now you mention it, because it's like when you think about it, shareholder meetings are basically a committee.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then the government also has committees. So it's like, in the end of the day, they're both committees, just in different ways and with
Yeah,
different
because
functions,
the
obviously.
government's committee isn't there to get paid. They're there to do
True.
their job and get it done. The private owned company has a committee that's there to get paid. Value of the money in their pocket. They want it to go up and they want it to keep going up as much as possible. So they're going to keep doing that. That's the difference in those committees.
Okay, that's
That's just
true. And I
between
also like
private
to
and
point,
public.
yeah, and I also like to note, oh man, I can't say the name, but I don't know. Can I? Am I gonna get in trouble if I say like what happened with Moody's like 10 years ago?
This is a
That
very
they
redemption
got paid basically to
opportunity.
like
Yeah.
lie about the was it like the debt packages that they were being sold for mortgages? They were falsifying the grades of it to make them better than they actually were. So yeah, you're right. There are cases where when money's on the line, obviously, institutions can act improperly.
And to bring that up, and the simple fact is that cancer research has well, not even just cancer research, but stepping a little out of the Federal Reserve
Yeah,
here,
because I'm
but the
like I'm
fact
actually a
of
nursing major, so you have to be careful with some of those statements here.
yeah, but science, like basically scientific experiments and science for research, like cancer research, has funding, but it also depends of what people throw their money to.
Well, okay, now you mention that. Obviously, a lot of research can it's a mix of everything because there's nonprofits involved,
Yeah.
there's universities involved, there
I
are
mean,
private
nonprofits and
firms.
universities are fine, but you got private parties that try to get involved in that for profit,
That's
and
true.
and that sucks. That's what I'm saying. Is like the where they have the value of money.
True. Also, many countries, and I'm not sure if the U.S. does, but to an extent, there's also government research too. In fact, I think Japan alone spends like 4% of its budget on like technology research or something.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, there's many different groups in a pluralist with pluralistic interests regarding research medically.
yeah, and that goes back to the simple, like I said, the value of money in the United States. Yeah, if it changes at all, it can destroy a lot of stuff. And I think it's
Well,
just
here's the problem.
nobody questions it.
Well, here's where it gets. Oh, we almost have an hour. No, I was gonna say. Well, here's where it gets like kind of confusing for people. Um, Man, we actually got into this. It's almost an hour. I was just gonna say. Well, here's the issue. If because how can the dollar collapse if we just all collectively said, "Oh, it's worth a lot." Where do we go from there?
Because of the fact that if you show that the value of money doesn't have something, for example, in history, you had the Chinese on one side, and you had the Romans on the other. And then you had the Parthians in the middle. The Parthians regulated the value of money with goods. They both agreed that both currencies had value of silver and gold. And they knew the value. Anybody in the Parthian Empire knew that that money had value. Our money, we say that it has value because we're told that. But if we have future generations that are told that value of money is worthless, and you have people that question it, then the people who make the money have to come up with a different way of feeding you all this bullcrap and lies about what it is. And I just want people to think about it. Because I think
Yeah,
it's too
because
late for our society to try to all of a sudden think about, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. I don't want riots in the streets. But the thing that I would say is just to have future generations and people understand that they're being fooled. They're being fooled really hardcore by the value of money that they're being told has value.
I was
And
just
that's
gonna
that's
say.
my
I
goal with
mean,
that.
yeah, because I mean, obviously, sometimes there can be instances where currency can obviously just lose value very quickly. Hyperinflation and all of that. What happened with Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Weimar Republic, and
Don't you mean Rhodesia?
oh, great, okay. Um, well, I mean, well, it happened during when the government was called Zimbabwe, I should say, because it collapsed in like 2015, the
Of
currency. But
course it is.
yeah,
Because Zimbabwe is a failure.
well, yeah, I mean,
Boo-ha.
true. And then we should also note that, well, actually, currencies do change all the time because I remember Mexico actually had a currency change in the 90s. And in fact, Turkey, I think, changed the lira recently, or at least they're planning to. And then Africa was actually agreeing to just have a universal currency amongst the whole continent to make it easier for trading
Yeah.
and to simplify trade amongst countries. Which don't get me wrong, I'm not against like an EU style currency thing if it means like more stability amongst trading countries. Because sometimes, what happened in Europe does get complicated. I mean, like, I don't, I shouldn't have to like translate every currency like every 5 hour drive you go into a continent.
And I agree with that. And the big thing I also just want people to question is the fact that like the euro changes. Like the currency will change by like a point, like a decimal point of just like
Dame,
a tenth of
dame,
something.
dame, oh,
And it can move.
dame,
Like
dame.
it can move a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, the dollar technically moves. I mean, didn't the Federal Reserve agree to like a 2% inflation rate per year on average?
yeah, but that benefits them because that's basically saying, okay, well, you pay us more to basically print the same value on the bill.
Well, I mean, at least in theory, it's supposed to benefit all debtors because, the value of your debt goes down every year. It's gonna benefit people who have debt. Like $100,000 house in 30 years. $100,000 is gonna be very different in 30 years, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. What I'm saying is the fact that like That's what they tell you up front of like that's what's happening. But that also means that they can change that value on a whim. And
Okay, that's true.
and that
That's
sucks.
true. I mean, it can, if in the wrong hands, yeah, you can destroy a currency.
Yeah.
Although one thing that
So
should be noted is, at least in terms of the dollar, obviously it's a very unique currency for many reasons, but I mean, it is technically the world currency in a sense. And also, I think like 79% of all the world's assets are held in dollars. And people always threaten China with the yuan that they're going to like try and overtake that. But it's going to be very difficult if the majority of all the currency in terms of tangible assets is held in dollars. So, I mean, how would you feel about like China's competitiveness in this regard?
I would say China has had a steady value of currency for thousands and thousands of years, no matter what name you give it. And they've traded with other countries. Like they've been a
Well,
big trading partner for thousands and thousands of years.
okay,
And
somewhat, yeah, you're right.
yeah. So that can't be disputed that all of a sudden, oh my gosh, they could ever overtake like the value of currency. I just think that they have a stable system that they have had for trading for thousands and thousands of years, and that ain't gonna change. Regardless if it goes up or down or competes with anything else,
Well, they
I
haven't
don't think
tried
anybody
for like,
cares about that.
well,
Oh
the
yeah,
IMF did criticize China for currency manipulation in the
all right.
last like 5 years or something, or
So
I believe too. I'm sorry, Creeping Iron. I didn't hear you, but go ahead.
seeing as we're coming over the hour mark, I got a few suggestions on how we can end this out. Beastar season 2 is dropping in
Yes.
January of next
Yes.
year. Everybody's hyped for that. Name your top actresses and why Uma Thurman is your favorite. Uh, Lucy Liu is also in there. The fact that they're both in the Kill Bill movies are irrelevant, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, this is really quickly. China was criticized of there a
Yeah.
lot of large companies have been acting as like banks, basically. Like imagine if Walmart just became a bank. Like every big company ever just agreed today, hey, let's all do banking
Yep.
and
Because
giving
there's
out
money in it.
unregulated loans.
Oh
Yeah.
my
I mean
god.
that's the thing is if it was more
Hey,
regulated
Craig.
for that a little bit, or at least like an understanding, that'd be fine for them.
Yeah, also there's also criticisms of like the Chinese debt bubble in terms of housing because they overconstructed, but that's a different macroeconomic issue. No, but yeah, that was a very good talk. Yeah, overall, yes, very good
Yeah. Thanks
points.
for
This
having
was
me,
a
man.
very
Like that was good.
anti-establishmentarian. Thank you. I can say it. Yes, I can say the longest word in politics history. Yes, man.
Hippopotamonstosis squipedaliophobia.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one.
yeah, that one.
That's
Yeah,
the one.
yeah, that was a word. Yeah. No, yeah, very good points made all around. I don't really know much about like how like the deep inner workings of these institutions are. I just know maybe more from a historical point of view and maybe more from the peripheral. But yeah, those are very good, many good points made here.
Yeah.
I actually did. My only regret here was I kind of wish Creeping Iron added more to it because I do think he has a lot to say too.
Yeah,
And
me too.
Do have stuff to say. I'm just not an economics fan. It's kind of not my subject of. I
I
get
mean, I
bored
like money as
easily.
much as the next guy, so I don't blame
Right.
anybody.
Yeah.
I'm the average tax-paying American.
I've just been. The reason I haven't been contributing is because I've been multitasking. In a subject that cannot be disclosed here,
Oh, okay.
basically. But I have been contributing to the subject, so I'm not a total third wheel or whatever you'd say.
I mean, it was
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, if you count Craig, who's recording technically, it's the fourth
Craig
wheel.
is
Yeah.
Craig is a doll. Thank you,
Yeah,
Craig.
thank you, Craig, for
We
being
love
Yeah.
very
Thank you,
Craig.
Craig.
yeah, thank you for being
Thanks,
very
Craig.
listening. Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, you could probably cut that part where I described nothing in particular.
I'll see what I can
Hmm.
do because this is gonna be like a very long recording. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's roughly about an hour. Yeah,
I'd say
thank you for
we have a
coming.
lot of good
I would like to
content.
plug for you. I mean, unless you want to plug it yourself, Mastro.
Yeah, you plug it.
Okay. Don't forget to follow
Hmm.
Mastro on his Twitter and his Twitch channel, which I will include a description below. And if
Hmm.
you're listening on any other sites, I will include it and a link in their descriptions as well. Thank you for coming. Also, Creepingiron, for if you want to plug anything
Absolutely.
yourself, go right ahead. I think you did for
I'm
some book recommendation. And
you can follow me on Twitter. Recently I have been. Don't look at my likes. If you want to stay safe, don't look at my likes. I'm an
honestly,
adult.
same.
I'm an adult. You don't have to see that if you don't want to. But yeah.
Yeah, we're
Draw,
all
draw my character if you want to. I don't care.
yeah, we're all 18 and dog years here. Don't worry, we're fine.
Yes.
Yes, we are. But I think
All right, that should conclude for today. Thank you for coming, everybody. I'm gonna have to
yeah.
struggle to turn off Craig now because I forgot how it works.
All right.
Oh, just put stop.
Wait, is that
Put
really how it
stop or
works?
leave.
Oh my goodness.
You can like kick him, I guess, but that wouldn't help.
I'm
How do you extract the file from him? I think we'd want to figure that out before we